Hey, what's up? So, yeah, I'm gonna try and make two videos tonight, which this is the first of the two. And, this is gonna be, the current Wavespell forecast. I'm a day late. Today is Kin 197, and this began on Kin 196. But, forgive me for my weird drawing. It is not as high quality as I can make it, but it serves right now. I'm not gonna do a preliminary breath, but we're gonna do a breath sequence at the end of the video if you stick around, and it's gonna be a whole set. So, but a quick version of a set. So let's just go ahead and get right into the content of the video. Actually, hang on one second. Sorry, I went to go splash cold water on my face. Okay, so yeah, today is the Wavespell forecast for the 16th Wavespell, which is the Yellow Warrior Wavespell. One interesting way to one second. One interesting way to remember the quartz, the four quartz, is the seals whose the number of the solar seal matches the number of the Wavespell, and it's the cardinal Earth family kin, which is the red dragon. That's the red and the red. You have the white world bridger, which is the white and the white. The blue monkey, which is the blue and the blue, and the yellow warrior, which is the yellow and the yellow, and that's 1, 6, 11, and 16, right? The Earth families go in, they jump by sets of 5. So one Earth family is 1, 6, 11, and 16. The next one is 2, 7, 12, and 17, etc., right? But we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna tell you about the yellow warrior real quick. The yellow warrior is a very interesting seal, especially to my own person, because I am a yellow warrior. I'm 5 warrior, which is Kin 96. And the yellow warrior represents the, it has the power of questioning the essence of, what is it? I can't remember power, essence, and action, but the questioning, fearlessness, and intelligence, right? The yellow warrior here, symbolized by this question mark here, is, since it's the yellow warrior, this yellow box with the question mark, that's where they got it from Super Mario, by the way. It represents spiraling into the sun, what the Mayans called the Kuxansum, right, which was the going into the doorway of the sun and receiving the honey, which is the honing, and that is the honer, or the honor, which is Timothy, in the Bible. That's God's honor, right, as well as Timotheus. It's the Terton, in the Buddhist tradition, the Terton who receives the terma, the downloads. In that sense, they receive the intelligence by going down the yellow brick road, and they are what is known as the warrior in this sense, right? They go through the challenges of life, whether externally or internally, and receive the revelations or the grace of God in that sense, right? And so the yellow warrior is also the completed human archetype. So when you have all 20 solar seals of the vigesimal system, 16 represents the conclusion of the human archetype. So the complete human is the yellow warrior. Whereas the last 4 seals, 17, 18, 19, and 20, represent the matrix archetypes. So and those are also reflected within the human, right? But they are more so like the very essence of the four alchemical powers manifest in the world, right? So the Myers-Briggs personality test, why there's 16 archetypes. There's a distinction within the law of time which separates the 16 from the 20, and it actually manifests in various different cycles and this and that. This is what the Warrior's Cube journey is all about, right? There's a lot that goes into it, but we're just going to talk about the Wavespell today. So when you just think about the Yellow Warrior, it's Jesus Christ is actually symbolized by the Yellow Warrior in lots of ways, most notably Kin 76. But we're just going to go ahead and get into the Wavespell. So the Warrior is that person who overcomes the challenges to help the people in that sense, right? A good idea is Aragorn from the Lord of the Rings, or Jesus Christ himself. So so we got tone 1, right? Tone 1 is Kin 196, which is Yellow Magnetic Warrior. And the tone 1 always gives us the purpose, right? Always gives us the purpose. And of course, this whole Wavespell, the purpose of it is the Yellow Warrior. And as I mentioned before, questioning, fearlessness, intelligence. You get the idea. So you go into tone 2, which is the Red Earth. Now, one thing that the Warrior and the Earth share in common is this question mark symbol that the Mayans used on the glyph. Excuse me. Because the Yellow Warrior is, walking around on this earth, right? Trying to basically act as like a Ronin in this sense. They go from place to place, basically helping out wherever they're needed in that sense. And that is Kin 197, which is the Red Lunar Earth, right? Well, every different of the 13 warriors is travels around and interacts with the Red Earth that follows it, right? So in this case, we get tone 2, which is the Red Lunar Earth. And again, tone 2 presents to us the challenge. And so what is the Magnetic Warrior? The challenge that, one, they're putting forth and also trying to overcome, that is the duality of the earth, right? The polarized aspect of the earth, right? And I mean, that's the very essence of what it means to be here in earth, is that because the essence of the Yellow Warrior is that consciousness which seeks to expand and to learn and to become more aware, right? When they're in this kind of world, they are split because they see things beyond the veil in that sense. And often, a lot of times, things become stagnant down here. There's like a lag time, things are dualistic, etc. So the purpose of the Warrior is to improve the earth, right? Is to just improve the essence of life down here, like living as a human being, right? So the challenge is of the Red Earth, right? So that's the challenge of the Wavespell. Now we get into the service of the Wavespell, which is tone 3, the electric tone. In this case, we get Kin 198. And I'm not going to talk about too much of the esoteric aspects of these numbers, but the previous Kin 197 is a prime number. In fact, it's prime 45. So we get a primal creation and a primal reaction with the white electric mirror. So the primal creation is showing us the dualistic challenge of the earth down here and what needs to be improved, right? The state of the world, how to live in harmony with the world, right? Or not the world, but the earth, and how to take care of her, and how we as human beings need to improve our own state of being, because often, a lot of times, the things that go out of whack are ultimately the human beings, right? Which is ultimately, based upon, higher alignments, purposefully going out of alignment. But the way in which we fix the world, right, because now we have a primal reaction, is through Kin 198, which is the white electric mirror. So what is the service? Well, it's to reflect, right? It's about understanding that everything that goes on out here is a reflection about what's going on in here. And the service, the point of the service comes in with understanding that, okay, well, what is it that I want to see? What is it that needs to be improved? And you have to reflect that back to others. In other words, it's, the whole idea of be the change you want to see in the world, right? And it's just that means that even if the people and the state of the earth and institutions and whatever is not good or what it should be, you still have to reflect back that that need, right? So it's you have to give even if nobody's giving back to you, right? And that's how the Yellow Warrior performs the service. That's how you, as you go through this path, that's what you have to realize, that you have to give and give and give, no matter if people, now obviously you have a limit, obviously you have to keep everything in balance, but ultimately the point of the Yellow Warrior is to have that transcendental intelligence, to understand that there are more things at play here than simply just worldly or physical mechanics, right? There are much deeper mechanics, again, because the Yellow Warrior is that who spirals into the sun. So one of the key things to help you understand this light grid in this sense is through tapping into the sunlight, right? But the service is to reflect, right? To put order in a world where there's no order, right? And understanding that it's this endless process, right? So the concepts of infinity really help you to understand and also be able to help to energize you, because that's another aspect of the third tone, is activation, bonding, and service, right? So again, the service of this wave spell, reflect back what you want to see in the world, even if the state of the world and what's being reflected back to you is not what it should be, okay? So now we get into another prime, which that makes this a twin prime. So this is all the more important because it is a primal reaction amidst two primes, okay? Or twin primes, which we get into prime 46, which is blue self-existing storm. So the tone 4 gets into form. So it's the method of to perform the service, the form in which the service takes, or how you perform the service, the method in which you do, and that is of the blue storm. So what is this telling us? Well, it's telling us that by going through catalyzing changes, by enduring the times of tribulation, enduring suffering, which ultimately comes down to a simplistic understanding of the peace of God. Once you learn that endurance, while sticking to the path and learning how to quiet that ego and purify it, and going through that storm, all right, the storm is not only an actual storm, it's also a symbolic storm. You weather the storm, all right, and you endure. That is the form in which that we carry out the service, right? Because again, the service is understanding that we are all mirror. Everything is a mirror to everything else. Everything is connected. Everything is family. Everything is one, right? Because we're dealing with the challenge of the earth, right? And that's the purpose of the warrior. Do you understand? So the purpose of the warrior realizes the challenge of the earth, realizes that they're all connected. Everything is connected. So they go through that storm, right? They endure through that storm because they take on the form of the storm, right? So that's Kin 199, which is a prime. So now we get, that's a primal creation. So this is also a very significant kin, right? Now we get into another primal reaction, which is Kin 200. And that's the overtone, which makes this yellow overtone sun, right? So the yellow overtone sun is, the power of the yellow sun is light, life, universal fire, enlightenment, etc. Whereas the overtone is basically where you realize all, the various different hierarchies of things. In other words, the overtones, how everything is acting as like a symphony, right? And how people ultimately cooperate with each other and the levels that people are at. Some people are very simplistic, who play, one note and they continue that one note over and over again, whereas other people are constantly changing their notes and they're all acting as like overtones and undertones that are creating this symphony, right? Now, the deeper meaning of all of this is enlightenment, right? So the overtone sun is really important because, again, all of the ultimate truths and the messages and the purpose and the unfolding of all of this is coming from the sun. The yellow warrior knows that, hence why they go into the sun, right? As well as they study the sun. They embody the sun, which is the archetype of immortality through the blue storm energy of birth, life, death, resurrection, right? They embody that sun, right? And we start to realize basically everybody who is either lacking that solar energy or people who are just overabundant in that solar energy, right? And then that solar energy goes where it's needed, right? And through that, we purify. Through that, we become enlightened. Our burdens are lifted off of our shoulders and we become lighter. We become wiser. We become more enlightened, right? And that's the whole power of the purpose of the sun, is to continue progress. Like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? Well, the sun's given it to us, right? And it'll also help to clarify things. Like if you've been walking down the path, if you've been following the directions given to us by the sun, and you've been, in a sense, like not recognized for being a conduit for that, this will make you like way more obvious to people. Like they'll realize like, okay, yeah, this person is totally enlightening us, right? And that has many different meanings. But yeah, so that's the overtone, right? And it'll also help you to recognize where other people may not be processing that solar energy as well. Then we get into tone 6, right? Which is the red rhythmic dragon. Shout out to Jacob on the Law of Time official YouTube channel. Red rhythmic dragon is essentially, okay, so we got the rhythmic tone, right? So now we understand the deeper meaning, the overtones, how everything is working in harmony with each other, right? Now we get into the rhythmic tone, which is all about balance. It's organization, it's cleaning up, it's understanding equality, right? So anytime you notice that the Vigesimal system is resetting, so when you go from seal 20 to seal 1, it has a powerful change, right? Because it's like ending the Vigesimal cycle and starting anew, right? So again, when you understand the overtones of that solar energy, right? And you understand where there's discrepancies and when there's like an abundance and stuff like that and things are not being treated properly, then you go into the red rhythmic dragon, which basically will help to like restore and rebalance like the very basis of life, right? But again, the red dragon has more to do with the magnetic, which is the the ego drives, right? It has more to do with like individual character and the mechanism of the left brain, which is the ego. So it's not as like potent as like the sun, right? But it does have its purpose, right? Because God has to clean up the status and the organization of the egos, right? And I mean, ultimately, the power of the dragon is understanding, like, obviously, the temporal nature of the ego. So ultimately, what it comes down to is nurturing, right? It's like you just, you tend to people as like a garden, right? It's not always fair, it's not always like pleasant, but if you have that transcendental sight from beyond, you learn to like deal with them a little bit better because you realize that at their core is the ultimate transcendental truth, which is Jesus Christ. And everything on the surface is just temporary. So you just nurture people in the meantime, even if that means disassociating with them, right? But you just nurture things like a great mother, and that's the power of the dragon, right? The great mother. And it's just an act, it's of the rhythmic tone, so it's just something we have to clean this up, right? We have to fix these things. But we get into the resonant tone, which then it converts from the active portion of the wave spell, and it transforms it and then, sends it to the passive part. And so in the very heart of the wave spell, which would be the very heart and in the middle of the yellow warrior, is the white resonant wind, which is Kin 202. And first off, I want to point out this is a number mirror. Okay, this is a mirror, so that's very important. The power of the white wind is obviously the spirit, right? Both, the spirit in all of its levels. So the spirit of your own individual mind and ego, as well as the great spirit of God, right? And also it has to do with breath and communication, right? So it's about that transference of energy from one person to another, which is the ether, right? And that's the spiritus, right? It's the transference of the energy. And that's the interesting relationship between the white wind and the yellow warrior, is that when you think of the cube journey, that's ultimately what's processing the energy, right? Ultimately, what we're dealing with here is solar and lunar energy, but ultimately it's the wind that processes that, right? So when in doubt, breathe it out, right? So that's the very heart of the essence of the warrior, because the warrior transmits intelligence. And how does that warrior transmit intelligence? Well, she receives it from the sun, but they ultimately transmit it through the breath, right? As well as process it through the breath, right? So within the heart of the warrior is the spirit. You'll notice this about every yellow warrior you come across. They tend to have this like one, a very spiritual energy, but two, they tend to be very nuanced in the way they talk. But again, I'm really just speaking from my own personal experience, so I'll try and not do that as much. But that's the very center of the wave spell, is Kin 202, white resonant wind. So it's resonating that spiritual energy, resonating with that breath, resonating with that transference of energy, the ether, right, the air, and also communication. So it's like that cooperative effort between people. Like, what are we exchanging? What are we giving and taking? And when you find that you are experiencing a heavier burden than you feel like you can handle, when in doubt, breathe it out. So yeah, that'll be a very powerful day, because when you pair up the white wind with the resonant tone, which the resonance is all about the breath. It's like the number 7 is air coming in and out of the mouth. So it's a very powerful combination of the resonant tone and the white wind, right? Very, very powerful combination. So now we get into tone 8, which begins the passive. So now the wave spell has established itself, the dielectric is discharged, it's now in that middle point, which then transfers it over into the magnetic. This is a very, it's basically the fusion, right? It's the two, come together, but now it's completely established, creation is finished, now it's the reaction, right? So, and it starts mirroring the first half, but it goes backwards, right? So as it gets established here, it's mirroring right here, and then it, pulsates right here, and then it goes back here. But we come in through this first half, and then we go this way, right? But it's also doing, the wave spells do this with the whole Tzolk'in as well, so that's also very important. Again, time is radial. It's not like linear, right? It's like as we go forward in time, it has like energy that's being mirrored from the end of time coming back to the beginning, right? That's one thing that's very interesting about the law of time. But we get into tone 8, which is the blue galactic night. So the previous wave spell was the blue night. That's what the galactic tone kind of represents. It represents the what I call the pop quiz seal, or the pop quiz kin. It basically encapsulates the entire previous wave spell in a singular day, which has the galactic represents the back and forth, the alternating quality of the solar and lunar energy, right? It's galactic, right? And it's like the rhythmic tone where it's this back and forth, this juggling, right? But it's not something that you have to kind of actively do. It's just something that sort of happens, right? And you just have to kind of go through it, right? Whereas like the rhythmic is something you have to like more actively, like the first half is something you have to actively participate in. It's more like you're consciously acting. It requires more creativity. Whereas this half is more or less just like observing like what's happening and going with the flow of what God is sending to you. Okay. So the blue night, it's like the previous wave spell was of the blue night, which was the dielectric abundance of the potential. So it basically helps us to become more aware of the dream spell, what the Lord has in store for us, helping us to understand the deeper depths of the internal world, which I don't know about y'all, but I was definitely getting glimpses. That's the dichotomy of the blue knight and the yellow warrior, because they're analog partners, right? The blue knight and the yellow warrior is the very essence of tapping into that mysterious knowledge, right? The esoteric knowledge. But whereas the blue knight is more unconscious, you kind of catch glimpses of it. It's more fleeting. It's more mysterious. Whereas the yellow warrior is when that esoteric knowledge becomes bright and you just completely are aware of it. You're like, oh yes, of course. It's, it becomes enlightened in that sense. So the blue galactic night being in the yellow warrior wave spell is like a complementary energy, right? So it's like those things that you kind of caught glimpses of in the previous wave spell and now come to fruition, right? They become more obvious, and you start to understand that your internal self, your dream body, right? Your dream self has like a cooperative effect with your waking self, right? They're totally different, like your dreaming self and your waking self, right? Or your subconscious and your actual, or your unconscious and your actual conscious. And they're working together simultaneously, right? And, this will help you to kind of understand the link between your dream self and your waking self, right? So expect a lot of like bizarre, like deja vus and like glimpsing that other half of you that's kind of like this weird reflection of you that's like kind of elf-like, mysterious, dreamlike, and it's like communicating to you, and that's your other self. It's really weird. But then we get into tone 9, which is the yellow solar seed. So tone 9 is all about the realization of what we're pulsating, right? So it's like we give out into the world, and then that determines what we get back, and what we get back is determined, like, what we put out. I'm not even sure if that made sense, but basically, you at every stage in your life, you are pulling in information, and then that turns around and basically determines what your actions are going to be, or what you're going to think, and then that determines what you get back, and so on and so forth. It's like this interrelated, like, giving and taking, right? Which is very powerful for the yellow warrior, because the yellow warrior is doing that with the sun, right? And so, I mean, the yellow seed is, basically like a tinier version of the sun, right? It's like an individual flame, or an individual light pixel, as I call them. As like an individual idea versus like the totality of all ideas, which is the sun, right? It's a very good time for learning. It's a very good time for being aware of, what we may be thinking wrong, or what we have been thinking right, and, gain a little bit more knowledge and consciousness of that. So that way we don't feel like, it's just a very, pairing up the solar with the yellow seed is a very powerful combination for, being aware of, like, what we're thinking, right? What the solar energy that, is trying to break its way through, trying to purify, trying to, like, go in and, like, correct our thoughts and this and that. It's a very good time for becoming aware of things, right? The yellow seed and the solar tone together. So yeah, that's Kin 204. And then we get into the tone 10, which is the red serpent. This time it's red planetary serpent. And tone 10 again is whenever the challenge of the Wavespell, which has been accumulating, right? It's established here, but it's been accumulating, and now it manifests, right? Hence the matching seal color. So now the challenge manifests, and then that's the day of the Wavespell when we have to step up, right? But again, because it's in the passive portion of the Wavespell, it's something that's placed before us, and we're more or less just following the instructions that were given to us in the first half of the Wavespell, right? This establishes the pattern. This is us carrying out the pattern, right? So this time it is the red serpent, which is the life force, right? It is the energy, right? That's transmitting through us. And I know, like, with everything that's going on right now, with the number 19 and the crown and everything like that, but please listen to the gospel of Lord Jesus Christ. Please pay attention to the Tzolk'in. Please pay attention to the sun. Please pay attention to your breath. Please pay attention to that path, that sacred path, because we are making great headway in this world. We are making great changes. I know it's painful. I know there's a lot of physical discomfort. I know that there's a lot of psychological torment paired with that, and a lot that you have to just get through. But it's worth it. I promise you, right? This right here is showing us the amount of toxicity in this world that we as disciples must void and hide the multitude of sins. We have to discharge it within our own heart, right? Now, it's going to continually go back out into the world, but as we we take responsibility for everybody who is not taking responsibility, God is glorified through his people, okay? And so, just take it from me. If you do the right thing and you be responsible where other people aren't, it's not a waste. It's not in vain. It will it's the most valuable thing, right? Because again, if you just chase after worldly lusts and worldly pleasures and worldly gain and all of that, you can keep it for a little while, but then you lose it, and then you have neither. You seek the kingdom of God and his righteousness. Yes, you have to suffer for a little bit, sometimes years, but if you keep going and you don't turn away from the path, your life consistently gets better and better and better and better, to where once you complete your own personal path and you're ready to take on the challenges of the world, you get both spiritual wealth and physical wealth. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It's a worthy sacrifice, right? Because you're ultimately doing what is right and doing what must be done. Somebody's going to have to do it, right? And somebody will do it. And whenever we get into that better world, do you want to look back on your life and think to yourself that you didn't do the right thing, that you just gave up? I think you have it within you to do the right thing. So the challenge is enduring that life force energy, enduring the death grips, enduring the pain of life. Because I promise you, just like birth with the labor pains, there's something beautiful afterwards. Because then we get into tone 11, and that is Kin 206, which we get in. So we pass through the challenge, and the challenge is complete, and we've either overcome or we endured or whatever it is that we, what we chose to do. We're then liberated, right, by the spectral tone, which is antipodal always with tone 1. And this time, the world bridger has been challenged this whole time, right? Which, in this case, the world bridger is merely acts as medium, right? Again, the world bridger, it's like you think of a bridge, right? The bridge helps you to get from one place to the next, right? But that's all that it is in the end. It's a medium that allows you to get from place to place, right? And whereas in the White World Bridger Wavespell, this actually has a very valid purpose, because it helps you to, it emboldens you and strengthens you to go across, to not be afraid of those symbolic deaths, because on the other side waits a whole new world, right? However, in this case, the world bridger has been challenged, and it's the purpose of the warrior, right? So we have to understand that it's about the worlds we're stepping into. It's like, what's the next little packet of energy? What is the next thing to do? What is the next goal to complete? What is the next step and the next chapter in our life? We turn the page, but we turn the page to understand the story that's being told upon the page, right? It's not just about the page itself, right? It's ultimately the purpose that's contained within the page, right? But we need both. We need both the medium that connects us both from the physical to the spiritual, all the dualities. We need that medium. We need that glue, that mortar, that bridge. We need that page. We need that, all those things, right? To help us to transcend, right? But, it's like I relate with the alchemical colors of white is about refinement, but yellow is the ripening, right? So it helps you to understand, and this is the dichotomy between silver and gold, or white and yellow, the albedo and the citrinitas. There's a time when you are complete. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to keep improving. You just be who you're ripening into, who you've ripened into. But then when it's the time of the white, that's when you sit back and you refine and you improve and you focus on doing better. But this time it's a yellow Wavespell, so it's about understanding that sometimes you're complete, right? And you just embody that which you are in completion, right? It's all about understanding the alchemical sequence and how this relates to our own personal growth and how that relates through the changes of time. This is the I Ching, right? This is the Tao. This is the alignment of the sky clocks. There's a time to be complete and there's a time to improve, right? That's the main thing. And so the Wide World Bridger has to stop feeling like something needs to change. It's like sometimes nothing needs to change, okay? And so when the spectralization happens and the body of the White World Bridger sheds, we see the beauty of the White World Bridger, which the White World Bridger already is, of a very spectral nature in this sense. So during this time, the White World Bridger really helps to become aware of like the huge changes that need to take place. And the power of the White World Bridger has amazing power to change things, right? So, and the Yellow Warrior informs the White World Bridger of what, and I'm talking about the White World Bridger as people, right? But ultimately, the White World Bridger they act as that medium to allow those things to go from one state to the next. They help to facilitate that. They are the medium, right? Now we get into tone 12. And I'm sorry if some of these sound vague and stuff like that. This is the first time I've ever done Wavespell forecast. This is the first time I've ever really gotten into details about the specific kin and stuff like that. I'm literally just looking at each of these seals or each of these kin from the principles of the structure of the Wavespell itself. And sometimes I encounter a specific kin or a series of kin that I'm like, I've never considered that particular kin. So if you are any of these kin and you have something to say regarding about your particular kin, put it in the comments, because like I am forever a student. I am forever a student, right? At times I am a teacher, but I'll always be a student. 206 is also interesting because, well, no, we'll get into that at a later date. Get into tone 12. We have the blue hand this time. So now that the spectral world bridger has occurred, which helps to understand how to facilitate energy transference, right? Now we get into the crystal tone, which is the cooperative effect, all the little pieces of a system working in harmony with each other. Paired up with the blue hand, which is the active willpower of consciousness, right? It's willpower that has effect upon their world, right? Hence the symbol of the hand, right? It's like when you think of the symbolism of the hand, it represents active willpower, right? To go out into the world and change things, right? It represents power in that sense, right? As well as creation, architecture, things like that. Creating, right? So when you have the tone 12 with the blue hand, it creates a very powerful change of humans getting together and really passing the torch from hand to hand, right? Really, especially following Kin 206, like this creates a lot of change, right? It's kind of like a little bit of a preview, to be honest, because this can as well kind of like is that last little reminder, like, look, we still have to like overcome this challenge though, right? But it's a very powerful kin to kind of give you an idea of like the good that's coming, right? Kin 207, very, very powerful kin in terms of like fixing the stuff on the earth, because remember, it's antipodal to the earth, right? And the power of the earth forces the blue hand of God coordinates that what happens on the earth, and the red earth tells us and our hand what we need to do, right? So there's this cooperative effect between the earth and the hand, right? It's antipodal. Um, but yeah, it's a cooperative help or cooperative dance of hands and will. So then we get into Kin 208, which, you know, is the conclusion of the wave spell. We get seal number 13, or not seal number 13, seal number 8, tone 13. So we get the yellow cosmic star. This is the final kin of the first 4 castles. It's the last kin which precedes the entryway into the green castle. And the green castle is the central castle of all 5, right? So you have the auxiliary castles of the red, white, blue, yellow, and in the center of that is the Emerald City, which is the green castle. It is basically represents the garden. It's the time of plenty, it's the time of peace, it's the time of abundance, it's the time of happiness, synchronicity, everything falling into alignment, right? Deep significance of chapters in our life occur during the green castle. But we have to walk up these 208 kin in that sense, symbolically, right? If symbolically, Merlin's tower, right? Merlin the wizard, his tower had 208 steps, to where that 209th step was his floor, meaning that the very pinnacle of his tower was the 209th step, and that's Kin 209, which is red magnetic moon, which is the beginning and it begins the whole 73 Tzolk'in cycle spin, and it also begins the 52-year destiny castle, right? So it's really the returning to the garden in that sense, right? It is the conclusion, but also the beginning, you know. And yeah, Kin 208 is that star, that shooting star, right? It's like when you think of tone 13, it's like you think of it as something that's flying, right? It is the flying, right? It is that whatever seal it's paired up with, just going and going and going and going and getting somewhere, right? So Kin 208 is the shooting star, right? It is that star that is shooting fast and like flying to align, right? It's trying to get into alignment, right? It's trying to get to that specific point in time where now it's no longer about endurance, right? Which is what tone 13 is about. It's no longer about the low part of the timing cycle. It's no longer about just dealing with the problems. Now it's trying to get into, that star is trying to get into alignment so that the next good chapter can begin. Okay, so I mean, because once this one concludes and wraps up the wave spell, it'll be a really good time as well to understand star study and, the ultimate archetypes of, the astral realm of all of these stars and archetypes, star archetypes, I guess, all creating this ultimate beautiful story that we're existing in, which can also be very tragic and painful too. But that shooting star does align, okay? It does get where it's going. It does reach its destination. It does find that place of peace and plenty, right? And that'll be the green castle. So it concludes the Yellow Warrior Wave spell, which the Yellow Warrior Wave spell is symbolically about the battle of good versus evil, which is the symbolized also by, say, the evil men of this world hijacking the law of time, right? They hijacked it, martyred a lot of the timekeepers, enslaved the remaining people who weren't that knowledgeable about it, hoarded and coveted the knowledge, and slowly over time erased the original language, like the Yucatec languages, from the natives who had this knowledge, slowly replaced their religion, slowly made them forget, And then they gave us this false artificial timing sequence and this timing cycle, right? They've given us false time, and that's thrown us out of synchronization with the natural world, right? That's thrown us out of synchronization with God, right? Because again, also, they've thrown us out of synchronization with the ultimate wisdom of the Bible. They've made us forget what's the Bible is truly about and what's really there. They've made us stupid, in other words. They've made us stupid and blind to where we don't even have the love anymore at that point, right? Because the love is choked and saturated in the darkness of ignorance and the darkness of forgetting, the darkness of the dream spell, right? But as we enlighten it and we bring that light and we shine it on there and we say, we now remember who we are as souls in this, or on this earth, in this earth, right? In the earth, sorry. But yeah, the Yellow Warrior is guiding us to figure out what we've forgotten and return us back to the garden of remembering. Okay? So that's the very essence of the Yellow Cosmic Star, is wrapping up this. It's the last chapter. It's the conclusion. And it is the final kin of all the first four castles. So this Wavespell is a very good conclusion. But I don't want to talk any longer than what I've already have. I want this to be short as I can. But yeah. And I was going to say do a breath. Yeah, we can go ahead and do the breath sequence real quick. So it's going to be a pretty quick sequence. I'm going to go through it quickly, but I'll guide you through the inhalations and the exhalations. The prayer will be, Lord Jesus Christ, I pray to you in your name. Guide my steps and bless me with your grace, mercy, peace, and love. Amen. Now begin by exhaling out of your nose. Sorry. We also have commands for the breaths as well. The first one is generate this. Now exhale out your nose. Breathe in through your mouth. Exhale out your nose. Breathe in through your mouth. Exhale out your nose. Breathe in through your mouth. Breathe out through your nose. Breathe in through your mouth. Breathe out through your nose. Breathe in through your mouth. And breathe out through your nose. That's the first breath. So we're going to be doing 7 in totality, and that was the first one. Second one. Now I'm going to start giving the breath commands because I'm getting lightheaded a lot more easily. So I'm going to do the breath commands. So, it's in, out, remember. So if I say nose, nose, that's in your nose, out your nose, etc. Just, if you mess up, you can go back and start from the first breath. Just if you mess up, just go back to the breath that you messed up on and start, from the beginning there. But, so the second breath. Translate this. Nose, nose. Nose, nose. Nose, nose. Nose, nose. Nose, nose. I just want to say I might screw up on the number of times that we breathe for the 4 basics. So, you know, the mouth nose, or the 5 mouth nose, the 5 nose nose, the 5 mouth mouth, or the 5 nose mouth. I might screw up the count on them. I'm pretty sure I'm hitting 5 each time. But I may end up accidentally doing 4. I may end up doing 6 just because I get lightheaded and sometimes lose my count. So I just, you know, sometimes I end up doing 1 less, or sometimes I end up doing 1 more. But with the 4 basic, you don't have to be precise with it being 5. You have to be a little bit more precise with the G and Z, but it's easier to know your place because it's the fusion breaths. So just be aware that when you're doing cycles of the basic, you don't have to worry about counts as much. You just have to do that particular one a lot, okay? But it does help to count, right? And it does help to do them in geometric sequences, right? Because it affects your consciousness and your memory, okay? So now the 3rd breath. Activate this. Mouth, mouth. Mouth, mouth. Mouth, mouth. Mouth, mouth. Mouth, mouth. Transform this. Nose, mouth. Nose, mouth. Nose, mouth. Nose, mouth. Nose, mouth. Okay, so doing those last 2 back to back, that was the 4th breath, by the way, which is the center of all 7. Doing those back to back, I'm kind of lightheaded, so give me just a moment to stabilize. If you've been, you know, focusing on the quality of your breath and making sure to breathe deeply and nice, you know, thick breaths with a lot of air coming in and out, then you'll probably be feeling it too. But yeah, that's the center of the sequence, what we just did. So now we're going to get into the last 2, we're going to get into the 2 fusions, and then we're going to end with an omega, which will be the 7th. So 5th breath. Activate this. Mouth, mouth. Mouth, nose. Nose, nose. Nose, mouth. Mouth, mouth. That was the G. I need a moment. Give me a moment. Excuse me. Should I really have to say excuse me for burping? It's things I think about things like that. Why do we say excuse me when we burp? Especially if a lot of the times when we burp, it's out of our control. I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit unnecessary. But I don't know. Maybe there's like a metaphysical reason as to why we say it, and it's like a good thing. I don't know. Moving into the 6th breath now, which will be the Z. Translate this. Mouth, mouth. Nose, mouth. Nose, nose. Mouth, nose. Mouth, mouth. And we'll go ahead and do the 7th breath in the video because I gotta get going. But hopefully I'm gonna be making the 2nd video later tonight. But yeah, it's the 7th breath, which will conclude the cycle. We'll be guiding each inhalation and exhalation because it's an omega, and I want to be a little bit more. Or I guess we could do the breath codes, but with a preliminary in breath. The command is generate this. Now begin by breathing in through your mouth. Out mouth, in mouth. Out mouth, in nose. Out nose, in nose. Out nose, in mouth. Mouth, mouth, mouth. Nose, mouth. Nose, nose. Mouth, nose. Mouth, mouth, mouth. I've never actively guided through an omega breath like that before, so forgive me if it seemed a little bit. Hopefully I did those commands right, or hopefully I did the guided breath correctly. Never done it like that before. That was weird, but it sounded okay. Hopefully it was okay. If you want, because I feel guilty, if you feel like you didn't do that one correctly, although I think I got it good, but if for whatever reason you want me to go over it again, I'll make an individual video tackling that, but of course by request, not, and I'll keep putting it back until my awareness of the breath gets a little bit deeper, but I might start the next video with that preliminary breath. So you can just click on that video, and somewhere in the beginning of it, you'll be able to find it, of course, if I upload it. But yeah, that should be everything. Y'all have a good one.